We continue today with chapter 4 of the book of Devarim, a continuation of Moshe's speech to Bnei Yisrael. V'ata Yisrael, Shema elachukim ve'lamashpatim asher anochi melamed etchem la'asot. Right? Listen to the rules and perform them. Asher anochi melamed etchem, which I am teaching you today. Leman techiu v'atem v'rishtem et haaretz asher Adonai Elohei avotechem noten lachem. So that you will enter the land that God has given to your forefathers, right? It's not just going to be about your military. You have to keep these laws, right? Ultimately, the Torah, Judaism, you want to have, why does God want this Judaic society? So that we can have a just society. It's not just, that's the whole point. So we need to keep these laws in order to have and to keep the land of Israel. It's not just some experiment like every other nation has a land. God wants us to create a certain type of just and kind society and civilization. A mitzvah here that many people have problems with because it says, don't add anything on. And there are always seemingly more additions, more chumras, more ideas. Some of them are good for us, but the Torah says don't add. Now, the rabbis understand this mitzvah Bal Tosef is very limited. You can't add things on, so you can't have a fifth tzitzis string. You can't have a fifth, right? We have the Arba Minim Sukkot. You can't add on another species that you want to. Remember what happened in Baal Peor? That's where Bnei Yisrael worshipped idols, and they had some sort of public orgy. God went and destroyed the people who worship Peor. While you, those who are here, you clung to God. You clung to God, and that's why you are alive today, because you didn't worship this Baal Peor. And now we're going to continue with a section all about mitzvot and some interesting things. And Re'eh, verse 5, Limadati etchem hukim u'mishpatim kasher tzivanu Adonai le'asokein b'karav haaretz asher atem ba'im shama l'rishta. See, I've imparted to you laws and rules, just as God has commanded me to you to live by, so that you enter and you occupy the land. Exactly what we said a few verses ago. Ushmartem va'asitem, and you should do them. You should observe them faithfully. Ki chochmatchem uvinatchem le'nei amim asher yishmu kol hachukim ha'ele v'amru rak am chachom v'navon hagoy hagadol hazeh. Right? Everybody's going to look around and they're going to see our society, the rules, the kind, the just, the fair, the caring, and they're going to say, this is a very wise and discerning people. These mitzvot, they have good reasons behind them. I believe this is the verse that Maimonides cites as the reason as to why we can explore the idea of ta'amei ha-mitzvot, of reasons for commandments, because here it says that the mitzvot are going to be a demonstration of the wisdom of Bnei Yisrael. Continuing in verse 7, Kimi goy gadol asher lo Elohim krovim alav ka'Adonai Eloheinu b'chol kareinu elav. And they're going to know that because there is no other nation that has a God who is close to them like we do, where God is with us at all times. And what other nation has such perfect and some just and such righteous laws? Like this Torah and the laws that it has in it. I give it to you this day. The Torah's laws are just, they're caring, they're kind. There, as we'll see later on in the Tanakh, it's chayim hilabach hazikim ba. They're supposed to extend life and give greater meaning. Moshe continues, Raki shamer lecha shmor nafshecha ma'od pentish kachet devarim asher alunecha ufen yasuru milavech kol yimei chayecha v'odata levanecha v'livnei banecha. But be careful, be scrupulous that you don't forget the things you saw. You don't forget Sinai, right? We know this. What have you done for me lately? It's always what happens recently. We're going to forget them, and we're not going to let our children and our grandchildren. And what can we not forget? Yom asher amana telifnei Adonai lecha b'chorev, the day you stood at Har Chorev, otherwise known as Har Sinai, be'emor Adonai Elai, and God said to me, Hakeli et ha'am, gather the people of Ashmeim et Dvarai, so that they can hear my words, Asher yilamdun la'iroti kol hayamim, that they will learn to listen to me and to revere me all of the days, Asher him chayim al adama ve'pneiim yilamidun, and also so they can teach their children. That's why Sinai happened, so that you would know how close God is to you and that God's laws are just, and you will keep them and you will You will value them and you will teach them to your children. And you stood underneath or at the foot of the mountain. And the mountain was on fire, was ablaze, ad lev hashamayim, to the skies. Choshech anan va'arafel, they're dense and dark clouds, the mystery of God. Vayomer Adonai alechem mitoch ha'esh kol dvarim atem shomim utmuna einchem ro'im zulati kol. And God spoke to you from the fire, a voice that you heard, a picture that you could not identify. All you did was hear the voice, and we know that. We see that back in the book of Shemot where it says v'chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot. They saw the voice. There was something, it was an experience that was so unique that they saw the voice. And God declared the covenant. God gave to you the Aseret HaDvarim, translated here that I see the 10 Commandments. Sorry, that's a misnomer. It's 10 utterances or 10 statements. It's not 10 commandments. There are more than 10 commandments in the Aseret HaDibrot. And the word diber means to speak. What's significant is the medium, is the message. What's significant, unless these exact commandments and more, that God spoke them and they were placed, I wrote them onto, God inscribed them onto the 2 tablets of stone. So right, I know everybody says the 10 commandments, but really it's the 10 utterances. It's Aseret HaDvarim, or as they're called more commonly, Aseret HaDibrot. So my apologies to CCB DeMille or whoever it is that directed that movie way back when. And God commanded me to impart to you all different laws. To observe them in the land that you're about to cross in and occupy. And it's interesting. I don't know if it's right here on the Torah, but Nachmanides, the Ramban, has an opinion that he raises that he doesn't say is halacha l'maisa. It's not something that we do, but he talks about how doing the mitzvot in Israel are different than doing them outside of Israel. They're much more special. We have a special visitor today, I see in the I'm allergic to cats, but it's okay on Zoom. So there's a special command to do it in Israel. And that's what Moshe keeps on telling them. He did these things for you to keep these commandments in Israel. And you should be very careful for your own sake. Because you did not see a shape when God spoke to you on Choreh from the fire. Lest you go and you try to make some sort of image of God, right? Or a likeness, that God is like a man or a woman, or like a beast, or any bird that flies in the sky, or a form of anything that creeps on the ground, or of any fish that is in the waters below the earth. We're going to meet in the book of Shmuel, the Philistine god Dagon. I'm not so sure that it has to do with the fish, but the classical commentaries understand as being some sort of fish god. The Philistines, who according to many were Phoenicians, seafaring people, and thus, they're the Dagar. You cannot make an image of anything unless you think that it's only animals, living things. And you look into the sky and you see the sun and the moon and the stars, the Milky Way, all the amazing things that God placed there. You're not supposed to serve them. God gave them to the other nations. It sounds like here God gave them to the other nations for them to observe. But God took you out of Egypt from the fiery furnace so that you would be his very own people. You cannot make these idols. You cannot do this. You have to worship God purely and not through intermediaries. And God was angry with me because of you. God was angry with me on your account and swore that I would not cross over the Jordan. Again, raising this question where Moshe seems to be, at least in some ways, changing history. I think God was angry at Moshe and at Aaron after the episode at Mei Meriva. But Moshe here is saying that it was because of you, Bnei Israel. And perhaps, like we said the other day, based on the Midrash, maybe their lack of support for Moshe when he pleaded to God. Maybe if they had come and they said, no, God, we need Moshe to cross over, maybe Moshe would have been able to go with him. I'm going to die in this land on the eastern side of the Jordan. But you will cross over the Jordan River and you will conquer that good land. Be careful. Do not forget the covenant. Do not make any images, any idols. Like I said, it can't be a fish. It can't be a rodent. It can't be a beast. It can't be a bird. It can't be the sun. It can't be the moon. It's like Dr. Seuss, right? You cannot do any of these images. Don't do it because God is an all-consuming fire. El Kana. God gets angry and is passionate and can go, and it could be very, very difficult and harmful. And in case you don't believe it, Moshe is going to tell them how it can get harmful. We're in verse 25. When you have children and you have grandchildren, you're long established in the land of Israel. And you make idols, you act wickedly. And you do things to anger God, to make God angry, to vex God. I swear by the heavens and the earth. These are being the witnesses. That you will perish from the land that you are crossing. You will not be there for a long time, because you will be utterly wiped out. And God will scatter you amongst the nations, and you will only be few amongst the nations that God will use to drive you to. And we know that this happens, of course, all the exiles that happened to Bnei Israel throughout history. And there you will observe gods of wood and stone. And I think in Nesha Torah seminar, they tell you the gods of wood and stone, wood, they would say, is the cross, Christianity, and stone is the Kaaba, the rock in Mecca. Asher lo yeru'un v'lo yishmun v'lo yochlun v'lo yirichun. And you'll worship these gods that can't see or hear and eat and smell. Ridiculous. And yes, there's hope. Verse 29, uvikashtem misham et Adonai Elohecha umatzata, but you will request, you will search for God there. If only you seek God with all your heart and with all your soul, right? And we know that this is the Devarim language that we'll see. Right? You have to go and you have to search out God. When you are in distress because of all these bad things that have happened to you. And it seems it's the end of days. And you will return and obey God, right? And this is many times throughout our history, after the exile of the 10 tribes during the time of Yeshaya the Navi, and after the exile, after destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash, it almost seemed like the Jewish idea is over. It's done with. God has rejected the Jews. He's kicked them out. No, Moshe is saying, V'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha. You can return. And so many times we have and God has. And why is that? Verse 31, because God is compassionate. He will not fail you. He will not forget the covenant you made with your fathers. And when you inquire about the bygone days before God created humans on earth, right, way back when. And people ask, has anything so great happened? Like what? Has anything happened forever, for all times, in all of eternity, where people heard the voice of God speaking out of a fire and survived it? Oh, or did anything happen like what happened in the Exodus from Egypt? Nothing ever happened like that. All of the miracles that happened for God to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. It's been demonstrated to you clearly, you saw it all, that there is nothing like God. From the heavens, God's voice came out to discipline you. And from right, and you saw his divine fire. And you saw the voice that came out. You heard the voice that came out from the fire. And because God loved your ancestors, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, and he chose their descendants. And that's why he took you out of Egypt. even and is going to allow you lo rishkoyim gdolim vatzumim mimcha mipanecha lavyacha latet lecha et artzam nachala kayom hazeh. He's going to, you are right. We've already been told by the spies that the nations in Canaan are big and they have big walls, but God is going to allow you to defeat their fortified cities. V'yadata hayom, and you will know on this day vashevota levavecha, and you should attach it, keep it close to your heart. Ki Adonai Elohim bashamayim mi'al. Words that we know, of course, from the Shema, that God, that from the Aleinu, that God is going to, is the top G, as I was just told in a school, was top G in the heavens, and on the earth below there is no other like it. And observe God's laws and commandments, which are beneficial to you, right? It's to your benefit to keep these mitzvot. A, because you're going to stay in the land of Israel, and more so because it's the creation of a just and caring society. You should keep those mitzvot. And as showing that it's a just and caring society, we now have something that Moshe does, more than just speaking. And now Moshe separates 3 cities on the eastern side of the Jordan. For the inadvertent killer, he'll run to one of these cities and be able to live without the blood avenger killing him at Betzah, Bamidbar, Beretz Hamishor, L'Ruvani, Ramot, Gilad, Lagadi, Golan, Bashan, Lamanashi. So one in the south, in the territory of Ruvain is Betzer, and then a little north of that is Ramot, which is and then Bashan in the Menashe. Those are the 3 on the eastern bank of the Jordan River. V'zot HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe Livnei V'nei Yisrael. This is the Torah that Moshe set before Israel. These are the decrees and the laws and the rules that Moshe get to Bnei Israel when they left Egypt. On the eastern bank of the Jordan River, after the defeat of Sichon and Og, they had conquered them, they'd taken their territory. Almost done. Moshe, right? They took all of the eastern bank of the Jordan River, and that's why at this point Moshe is able to establish these 3 cities of refuge: one in the territory of the Ruvain, one in the territory of God, and one in the territory of Manasseh. And it's again an expression of Bnei Israel going into the land of Israel. Moshe says, I know there'll be errors, I know there'll be mistakes. Here is the place to run to. Keep God's Torah close to you, because it will be for your benefit, and it will allow you to maintain and to remain in the land of Israel for many, many generations.